Welcome to Center Cup. I am Kyle Musarino, joined as always by Nick Newmeyer, and it is a two-man game today. Just Nick and I bringing you a little preview, and then we are going to have a special episode later today. So just Nick and I this morning, we are going to talk about the Women's Open, the Rocket Classic, a little Corn Ferry Tour. But first, a few events of recent news that we should touch on at least. First being that LIV is set to cancel its team championship in Michigan, I believe. No official announcement yet, but we've seen kind of some stuff leak through about the chances of that playing becoming slimmer and slimmer. Nick, what have you heard about that?
Yes, I think a lot of this information has come from the Twitter account Flushing It, who has been very, very big on breaking LIV news from the time being. We first heard this on the 24th, saying that, or actually no, I'm going back even further. On the 22nd, he said, multiple LIV golf players have told me they do not expect the team championship in Michigan to go ahead, and nobody within the league has been able to confirm whether it will be played. Martin Keimer told Ben Parsons of Today's Golfer there's just a 5% chance they will complete the final event of the season. And, more has come out about LIV, not paying their contractors. Travel and accommodations have been canceled for some contractors to go to Michigan. There's been more lawsuits for breach of contract. And then it came out yesterday that he broke the news as well that LIV is set to cancel the team championship in Michigan with an official announcement expected today. We have not received that announcement as of yet, so we are still operating in this, limbo period of are they or aren't they? But it sounds almost certain that LIV is going to cancel the season finale. And quite frankly, I don't know. We've seen them rebound from, obviously Mexico City was supposed to be canceled, and then they played a few more events, and there was this hope that they could maybe survive and try to just get new sponsorships. And then with the Asian Tour forging that alliance with the PGA and the DP World Tour, that effectively took away one of their largest bargaining chips. And quite frankly, I don't see how you could pitch this thing to investors anymore if you're canceling your flagship season-ending event.
Yeah, I mean, the quote that made the round was, the 5% chance Martin Keimer gave it, which is an oddly specific percentage as well as super low percentage too. I mean, you might as well say next to nothing. And
so you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, exactly. That's the definition of the meme. You're telling me there's a chance. LIV, the sponsorships that they're trying to get and roll in seem like they've got as many of those as we have emails being sent to Will. So not a good side. Not a good side for LIV. So
oh man.
We'll see if maybe that news breaks while we're on the air that they've officially canceled it. But
LIV Golf, we are also accepting potential investors.
Yeah, exactly. Us too. We're just right on par with LIV. All right, cool. Okay, so the next bit of news that we saw was the Sampo reaching a multi-year deal to sponsor a new tournament on the PGA Tour's Championship Series. Sampo is, global insurance and financial services company. So they are taking over an event next year in Napa, and then that sponsorship will transition to a new Championship Series event that will relocate to a different market with a yet to be announced date in 2028. So another sponsorship announcement for a Championship Series event. What can you say about this one, Nick?
Yeah, this one comes after, we found this out yesterday. This one comes after, we heard a few months ago that Detroit Golf Club would no longer be hosting the Rocket Classic, and that the reason for that being was that the Rocket Classic did not want to pay the exorbitant fees to be considered a Championship Series event. So they will no longer, they did not renew, their contract was expiring this year. They did not renew for next year. So there's a gap in the schedule for next year. And so they're going to go to Napa, to beautiful Napa Valley. I'm sure all the the wives and girlfriends are so happy that they get to spend a week there next year. And then they'll, like, as you said, they'll transition to a new location as part of that 2028 schedule. So I think you had mentioned this before we got on the air, that this is kind of more of just like a placeholder event to where they can sort of just, play there for a year and then figure out what's going on. We've mentioned before that, there's this sense of not everybody knows what's going on. So basically have that event there for like that placeholder, figure out what's going on, find that, there's rumors of Seattle being a new spot. And so, fingers crossed on Chicago, but this should be a good event. I think, I don't really have too much on it. It's just that, a new event coming on the calendar is, noteworthy.
Yeah, definitely. That I think came a day after Monday announced about the Travelers Championship. Rocket Classic, the Detroit course, decided they didn't want to pony up to be a championship event. They didn't want to be a challenger event. So to the wayside it goes, unfortunately. And we will talk about...
I can't exactly blame them. We've seen, we've talked about how it's going to be a bit of a preview of what the Challenger Series is going to look like with like both the ISCO and the Corales Punta Cana Championship. Of there's two events on TV, but I think both of us can confidently say we didn't watch a single shot of the ISCO or Corales, and so if they're both on at the same time and given the opportunity, people are going to watch the Championship Series event. So to be relegated to, what the Rocket would have had to pay in order to stay on as a Championship Series event would have been double what they're already paying now. And if they didn't pony up and pay, they would essentially be getting a fate worse than death, which is irrelevancy, basically. And so, I can't say for certain what's going to happen to these events that don't pay that money or don't get invited to be on the Championship Series. It's, probably one of the unintended consequences of this new schedule is that, some of these events are just going to fade into obscurity. And the Rocket was going to be one of them. We even saw, looking ahead to the Wyndham, did you see, was it the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce was ready to put up $40 million to ensure that it stayed on as a Championship Series event. There's a lot of money in this thing, and you can already see the urgency starting to come in to make sure you're on the right side of that. And if you're not, that's not great.
Yeah, it's as we've been getting, more and more information, from the time it was announced that they were going to do this 2-track kind of layout to now kind of seeing the ripple effects from that between tournaments and clubs and sponsors trying to position themselves to be either a championship event or a challenger event. And, we've heard differing opinions from golfers too in regards to how this is going to play out. It's, the more info we get, the more interesting it is to me to see how this is actually going to play out. Super intriguing, by the time 2028 rolls around, just to see how each tournament gets treated and gets talked about and gets covered. It's kind of hard to visualize it now, but I'm really intrigued for how we're going to be living that existence when we have the Challenger and the Championship events going on.
Yeah, because I think, at the end of the day, this is all still very much like concepts of a plan. Mm-hmm. And so there's not, I think everybody it would be foolish to assume that this is the structure that is going to exist in 2028. There's probably going to be so much more announcements and so much more change brought on before. Even Brian Rolapp said during his press conference at the Travelers that, there's still a lot in regards to what the Corn Ferry is going to look like, in regards to how the two are going to coexist. There's still so many unknowns, and I think they kind of just wanted to get out in front of this and announce it. And I was
going to say, what do you think about that? Because it feels like we've known so much about this, and I think you see this with a lot of other leagues, the NFL and the NBA, and even baseball. You get there's only one way for some of this information to come out from the top, and that's strategically. So is there a chance Rolap kind of wanted to float this idea out before it became more of a reality, to kind of test the waters and see how people reacted to it? And to see, hey, would this get shot down, or would people be open to this kind of thing? What do you think about that strategic media play?
Yeah, I think that absolutely was the case. I know Brian Rolap has stated in the past, I think the exact quote was, if you do what the fans want, nine times out of 10, you're going to be doing the correct thing. And so, if you look at what he announced, like what he actually announced at the Travelers, it was a lot of stuff we already knew was going to happen, but we were hearing it from his mouth. And so there was a lot of stuff he sprinkled in a couple of new things like match play for the FedEx Cup playoffs, a rotating venue we already kind of knew, and the National Opens was a new thing, focusing transitioning the FedEx Cup fall into a series of National Opens. I think as we found out later, that was probably a strategic announcement to get the Asian Tour enticed to want to talk to them as well. He probably said that with the Asian Tour in mind. So I definitely think that there was absolutely a path to, just gauging he gave us enough, but also nothing at the same time. Like I said, this was all stuff that we knew was going to happen. And I also think demonstrating the new system and then playing two events on that hybrid system was kind of as I mentioned, it was a wake-up call just to see what it would look like. And I would imagine it has to be a wake-up call for some of these other events that are on the bubble of should we pay, should we not? Hey, this is what's going to happen if you don't.
Yeah, totally. So lots of interesting stuff there, and I'm sure more is going to trickle out little by little as the year goes on and we march towards the FedEx Cup fall. Okay, any other bits of recent news, or should we jump into a little Women's Open preview?
Let me give a quick Twitter search to the keyword LIV Golf to see if any announcement has been made. It looks like it has not. Let's go to England.
All right, let's do it. So Royal Lythams in St. Anne's is the course that is hosting, we've joked around, singular course. So far this year, Nelly Korda and Heron Ryu have each won 2 majors. So we've had 4 majors. This is the 5th in women's golf, and those 4 majors have been won by 2 players. Nelly, of course, started off scorching hot and it's kind of cooled off lately, and Heron Ryu has been on fire lately. Korda, Ryu, and Lydia Ko are going to be playing together Thursday and Friday as well, which is super intriguing. A great group. I mean, that's just awesome that they did that. So that's going to be super exciting to watch. We're going to get links golf. I've seen some weather reports. It looks like Thursday could be rough. Friday a little bit better, and then by the time the weekend rolls around, it could be different and just better conditions. So I think we're going to get all sorts of different playing conditions throughout the entire week. This course opens up with a par 3, which is a bit unusual, but
that's interesting.
Very interesting. So you're going to want to make sure you're dialed in as Korda, Ryu, and Lydia Ko play off together from the jump on Thursday to see that first hole par 3. What are you looking forward to for this, Nick?
Yeah, I think for the first time in 2026, my number one player to watch isn't Nelly Korda, and it's Heron Ryu. It's very rare in today's professional golf landscape that you have somebody playing when they've won their last 2 starts, and it's even less likely that those last 2 starts are both majors. And call it what you want. Maybe it's the LPGA schedule that is kind of shoehorning all of these majors into the same time. That's something that could be adjusted for later. We've mentioned this before, but Heron Ryu's playing the best golf of her career right now. She's coming off of 2 major wins. That's obviously going to be a big factor. She's recent form is so big of a deal on at this time of year. And so if she can continue to stay hot, she's absolutely my player to watch. She's one of the best ball strikers, especially in the past month. She's been one of the best ball strikers on the planet. And that fits in very well for Lynx Golf. My only area of concern is she's losing about a half a stroke with the putter,
Yeah.
and especially on links course, you kind of have to know how to putt, and so that's been kind of something that has hampered her a little bit, but not affected her. Like you look at the final round of the Evian, she could not buy a putt to save her life, and it took till the 18th hole for her to make a birdie, and then she made one again on the first playoff hole. But before that, it was just a lot of putts that just did not fall. And, she kept herself in it with some really steady ball striking. But, that's not going to fly at a links course. That's something that, you're going to need the putter to cooperate. And, if she doesn't, then, I'm not entirely sure her game can survive. But, it's kind of what we were saying about Nelly at the beginning of the year. Like it's kind of hard to bet against the top golfer on the planet right now, especially one that has won in her last two starts. It's going to be very hard to convince me that she's not going to just go out and, if not win, just go out and have another mega result again.
Yeah, it would be hard to fathom her not being at least towards the top of the leaderboard. It's been interesting with Nelly, just it's hard to maintain the level she started the year at. I mean, she was like on a historic pace and then really just fell off a bit. But yeah, Heron just doesn't have maybe that traditional links course, and it seems like it's going to really play like that. So you wonder how that's going to affect her. Lydia Ko is another interesting one. She won in 2024 at St. Andrews, and she's just such a smart player, and she's kind of, where Rue is hindered by the links course lack of experience. Lydia Ko, that's where she can really shine. And you also hear that with like Charlie Hull and some of the, and Lottie Woad, of course. You feel like they should have an edge in that regard. So, we'll see how that plays out for sure. But the links course, sometimes it matters more on certain days, and it doesn't necessarily matter the whole weekend. So that's going to be an interesting aspect of this, and it always is with links golf.
Yeah, I think the one big thing is that looking at one of the players that I marked down was Jenny Shin, last week's winner in Scotland. Yeah. I think it's kind of the same thing we said about Tom Kim heading into the Open, was that if you know how to play links golf, you know how to play links golf. So someone that is very hot and has won their most recent start on a links golf course, obviously that didn't work for Tom Kim. He ended up missing the cut at Royal Birkdale. So, I don't even know why I'm saying this, but Jenny Shin is absolutely one of those players that, and especially this past week in Scotland was a very difficult test of links golf. It wasn't we saw it was somewhat scoreable at Birkdale. It was difficult at times. There's a lot of wind in Scotland for the men. So she got a really difficult test of links golf. So I'm wondering if that's going to translate. That's certainly something that, it's something that I want to keep an eye on, especially because recent form, as we mentioned, is just so big on links golf.
Yeah. Are you surprised that Heron Yu is still the third ranked player in the world behind Gino? I mean, Gino has been kind of non-existent this year, it seems, after her win, which seems like forever ago. And she just hasn't been great in majors. I'm surprised to still see her ranked as the third best golfer. That's probably points accumulation kind of thing. I don't know if people still think of Gino as the second best golfer in the world.
Right. I put her down on like our players to watch, and the only note I just said Gino and then Sai. Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna say the same thing every single time of, she's one of the best players in the world. She should be winning a major. She's very young, but it's also Gino at a major and she hasn't won yet. Like, we're on this same path, and you just, if you want to know our thoughts on Gino Titicolo majors, just go and look at every single one of our episodes, every one of our preview episodes. We say the same exact thing. And so it's kind of, but to answer your question a bit more directly, I'm not surprised that she is still the number 2 ranked player in the world. It's kind of the same of like Scotty for a lot of the year hasn't been the top ranked. He hasn't been the best player in the world, but he's been the top ranked player in the world. Would anybody consider Rory McIlroy the number 2 player in the world right now if it wasn't for all of the accumulated points at last year and this year's Masters? Like, I definitely think it's points related, and it's certainly not over. I think that there's certainly a path for her to continue to be one of the best players in the world, but I stress one of.
Yeah. How about Charlie Hull's chances? She's always a popular player. Had a brutal showing last week in a rough opening round for sure, and some shots that made their way around the Twitter sphere.
I was gonna say made their way around the green 9 times.
Yeah, made their way around the green for sure. The question, she's been a runner-up a few times in majors, and the question is she ever going to get over that hump? What do you think?
I think if there was ever a place where she was going to do it, it would be here. Yeah. She's English. That's like legitimately the first thing that I wrote down in the notes is just English. And she has, she's played really well at this event. She has 2 runner-up finishes in both 2023 and 2025. She's played really well at the majors this year. I feel like this has gone very under the radar in how she's played. She's been a very solid, I think she made that run at the U.S. Women's Open, finished runner-up as well. She's certainly has what it takes to contend in the majors this year. And, growing up in England and playing courses like this, getting that links golf experience, this is something that I definitely think she has what it takes to get over the hump this week. And I think that, she's someone that I would definitely, she's one of the best ball strikers on tour. And, when she's not putting it off the greens, she's a very formidable putter as well. So I think, that's kind of going to be the dominating headline, just because like that moment is just so fresh in everybody's brains from last week. But, she's a very formidable major player. And I think being at home in England, I think would be a very, very storybook way to get her first major. And, she's come so close so many times. I think personally, if I was going to make a pick this week, I would be picking her. Stay tuned.
Okay. Wow. And then another English woman, Lottie Wood, of course. She's been inside the top 10 in each of her first 2 starts at a Women's Open. She was the low amateur in 2024 and then was T8 last year. She's no longer the up-and-comer. She's arrived, much like we were talking about Jackson Coyvan. She's established herself even more. She's the 5th-ranked player in the world, for crying out loud. So it wouldn't be a surprise to see her up and competing as well. And she's going to win one of these years, and it's probably going to come sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. And she's another one that has a lot of experience at links golf. She won the Scottish Open last year in her professional debut. She won the 2022 R&A Women's Amateur at Carnoustie. She's, as you mentioned, also English and has a lot of experience growing up on these types of conditions. My only area of concern is that she missed the cut last week in Scotland. So that's odd. I don't think anybody was really expecting that. So that's sort of the you don't really want to bank on somebody coming off of a missed cut, but at the same time, like, I think that, her years of experience should play very well on this course.
Yeah. And then I'd be remiss if we didn't mention last year's winner, Miyu Yamashita, who's been playing well too. She's gotten progressively better in each major this year with a 34th, a 12th, and then a 4th place finish. She was 5th last week in the Scottish Open, so if you're looking for someone who's at least in good form recently and shaping up, and she knows how to do it, it'd be Miyu. So she's definitely someone to watch for as well. And yeah, Gino has. I want to circle back to Gino real quickly. She's had a couple consecutive top 10 finishes in majors, and it feels like the midseason lull maybe was just longer than expected. So I made it sound like I'm out on Gino. I think she's going to play well this week, and I wouldn't be surprised to see her get her 3rd straight top 10. I just don't think she's going to win necessarily.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see her in the top 10 because she has been playing a little bit better recently.
Correct. And I think, it's the same way, like, we're not out on Scotty just because he hasn't won since January. We're not, like, if we're being honest, Rory's probably going to win the Masters in 2027. Like, he's, just because, we've criticized his lack of playing, and we've said that, maybe he's not the best golfer in the world right now, but like, he's still the number 2 ranked player in the world, and he's the number 2 ranked player in the world for a reason. And so I think saying that, it's Gino at a major and casting doubt there, it does not mean she's going to miss the cut. Like, just because she hasn't won at majors doesn't mean she hasn't. It certainly does not mean that she hasn't contended. She's came very close at majors, at a lot of majors in her career. Like, last year, she was runner-up at the Evian, made it in a playoff at the Evian. So she's been there. She's just knocking at the door. I think this is not, and I can't believe I'm going to bring him into this conversation, but this is not we're out on Jordan Spieth, he's never going to win a major again. This is more Scotty is very close, and he's absolutely knocking on the door, and one of these days he's going to get let in.
Yeah, totally. So if I gave you Heron Yu, Charlie Hull, Nelly Korda, or the field, what would you pick?
Well, I mean, I feel like we haven't really even talked about Nelly Korda. We've kind of just mentioned her in passing, so we can kind of get into that a little bit. She's on Grand Slam watch once again, and I'm sure she's absolutely thrilled about that. But, this is an interesting Nelly that, we can be a little bit more dramatic about this. And like, we're not trying to say like she's fallen off. She's still probably the betting. I haven't looked at the betting odds, but she's still probably the betting favorite this week. And, it's just interesting to look at her now where, earlier in the year, we wondered if she would ever lose again. And, now she finished, what was it, T10 in Scotland this past week. And, she's done what she's needed to do. Like, she's like we mentioned after she missed the cut at the Evian, she's not going to win every single tournament she plays. And I think the sooner that the golf world realize that, the better it's going to be for her. And, on paper, she's still, she leads the tour in strokes gains, tee to green, putting, this is something that we've talked about on this show, is that out of the top 10 in strokes gained leaders, even, I'm scrolling down the list, even we make it to the top 25 on the PGA Tour, or on the LPGA Tour, excuse me. There are only 2 players within the top 25 of strokes gained that are gaining over a stroke in putting. And, as you get lower down the list, you're starting to see a bit more red. And so a lot of these players are a bit more average with the putter and are just, relying on ball striking as well. And so Nelly Korda kind of is in that mold. She's gaining, 0.33 strokes with the putter. That's not something that's going to kill you. And I think that, given her ball striking pedigree, that's something that, she's been able to forgive a little bit more. But if you look at the last two majors, she could have very easily made a run at the KPMG Women's PGA, but the putter just didn't cooperate with her. It was the same at the Evian, where the putter just absolutely refused to cooperate, and she ended up missing the cut. So am I saying she's going to miss the cut again? I absolutely not. So that's that would be near career suicide for me to get. It would look really good if I'm right, but if I'm wrong, that would be terrible. And so her week is really just going to depend on where the putter is at, just because what it's been, especially because these majors are so shoehorned together. Recent form, like, you can really get a gauge of how she's going to perform based on her most recent starts, and it has not been pretty with the putter. So I'm really curious as to what version of Nelly Korda's putter we're going to get this week.
Yeah. That
didn't answer your question at all, actually.
No,
but
that was some good background info on it. She is the favorite, obviously. She's at plus 600. And then Miyu Yamashita is at plus 1,200. Gino plus 1,300. And Haren Yu is plus 1,300. Hyoju Kim is plus 18. And Charlie Hull plus 2,200. Lottie Wood plus 2,500. Lydia Ko a little further down at plus 3,000. So, Nelly's a big favorite, as she should be, but I don't know if she just hasn't played. It's just so hard because, like I said earlier, it was impossible to keep up the pace she was at. I mean, when she won the Chevron, she just kicked everybody's ass. Nobody got within 3 shots of her all weekend, I think.
Right.
She was just on such a tear. It was just unsustainable. So, maybe as things fluctuate, she wants to finish the major year well. She comes out with an all-time focus here and tries to get it done and finish that Grand Slam that has been evading her throughout the last couple majors. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to do our picks, and Will is going to have his pick as well. I don't know if we're going to allow Nelly to be one of them. I think I would, because I don't know if she would be my pick necessarily this week.
Right. I was going to say, I would almost consider, putting a moratorium on both her and Haren Yu, just considering what's bad. I feel like if you're banning one, you have to ban the other. But, that's, you had mentioned, I think I said at the beginning, I don't know how she's not the massive favorite just because of what she's done in the last 2 majors, but it seems like, Vegas is aware of her struggles with the putter. And, as I mentioned, that very well could hamper her quest for a three-peat. So, that would certainly explain why I'm a little surprised that Gino is that far up, if I'm being honest.
Me too.
But
yeah, me too.
I think I'm still going to go with Charlie Hull.
Wow. Yeah, that's you just have a feeling she's going to get it done one of these years, and the momentum of being at home is going to maybe be the wind at her back. The last time the Open was at Royal Lytham in St. Anne's was 2018, which was won by fellow Brit Georgia Hall. So it would be a great story, man. It really would be. It'd be cool for her to finally – what has she been, a runner-up in 4 majors, I want to say?
Yeah.
So, there's so many young stars. We've talked about this on the men's side, but in the women's side in particular, there's so many young stars. And Charlie Hull she just seems like an old vet, at whatever she is in her early 30s, or if she's just 30. She's either she gets it done soon or it's not going to happen. So this would be a good week for it to happen.
Yeah, it's very much like that. Like what we've been saying about Justin Rose, where it's like, if it hasn't happened now, it's probably not going to happen. Like the longer it goes without happening, it's just not going to happen. But, I think she's someone that gets very energized with the crowd, and they're absolutely going to be pulling for her. I don't think this is a Tommy Fleetwood situation, if I'm being honest. I don't think we need to invest in security for our panelists, but they're okay. We have breaking news from Will just now that the Century at Torrey Pines is set to be in the championship series in 2028. That was not a shock to anybody, but we're going to see a lot more of these events like rolling out, like with the announcements of championship series. Like their place, they're not only like, we know they're going to be on the schedule, but their place within the schedule is going to be announced. What was I even saying before? Yeah. Okay. Charlie Hall. She's been around, like, as you mentioned, she's come very close a lot of the time at majors. Like, I don't think this is a Tommy Fleetwood situation where it's just kind of like at home and, it's kind of just like a feel-good moment with nothing. She's a legitimate contender this week and has been a legitimate contender for a very long time. So I think if there's a week for her to pull it off, I think this is absolutely that week.
It would be a lot of fun for sure.
And she's just a fun person. Like, she's very funny. Like, she's maybe a bit less vulgar than this, but she's almost like the Tyrrell Hatton of the LPGA, where like you always just gotta follow, just keep that boom mic close. Something's gonna happen. Like, whether she's like says something funny, whether she has like ice cream on the course, like you always have to have a camera on her 100% of the time.
Yeah, and I don't think she'd be insulted. She is only 30. I don't think she'd be insulted by you comparing her to 45-year-old Justin Rose. But she on the women's tour, especially with everybody being so young, she just seems like she's the savvy vet of the group, and the whole ripping darts thing, and she's a very popular player. So people are going to be rooting for her. Her betting odds get inflated just because she's a name everybody knows, and especially this week, I'm surprised her odds aren't even better because of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was a little surprised there.
So it's going to be really fun, and there's a lot of names to keep an eye on and a lot to watch. Include that opening par 3 with, I think there's like 5 bunkers that could all be penalty.
Oh God.
I mean, that's just an awesome way to start.
Yeah. Really opening on a par 3 is psychotic. How long of a par 3 is it?
I think it's 180, I saw.
Okay, so it's a par 3.
Yes, yeah. So that's just super fun. Super fun. Any other names or storylines you're looking at?
Once again, we have the amateurs as well. I feel like that's, more so than the men's game. That's something that, we always have to keep an eye on. Kiara Romero, once again, in the field this week. She's joined by, just looking at the standings, Kiara Romero has 19 points, needs just the 1 point in order to make in order to get her LPGA card. Maria Jose Marin in the field as well with 17 points. Same with Farrah O'Keefe. Just looking at, some of the big names in the field. We already talked about Kiara Romero, Farrah O'Keefe, and Maria Jose Marin. We also have Paula Martin San Pedro as well. These are players that, continue to get that experience, continue to probably contend. Like, we're probably going to see one of those players near the top of the leaderboard, as we always do. Like, we saw Farrah O'Keefe pretty high up there as well. So at the Evian. So it's, as we've mentioned before, this is something that, you pay attention to a little bit more than the men's game. And, just that amateur wave is always going to be something to keep an eye on. Like, the future is bright on the LPGA Tour, as I've said in years past. So very excited to see what that'll look like this week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be really fun to watch. And you're right, there are a lot of good young golfers on the women's side who, like we saw from Lottie Woad, like just ready to challenge right out the gate, and are good and polished players very early. and don't need much easing into. They are here and they're ready to compete. So just a few more names to keep your eye on for sure this week. I think first tee times, I don't know when the first tee times are, but I think it comes on to the Golf Channel at 4 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. So if you're up late or up early, definitely something to put on.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they don't get too screwed over by broadcasting, and like there's at least a sizable chunk of, at minimum, the final round, but a sizable chunk of just the entire tournament being able to be viewed at a reasonable hour in the United States. Because especially just with links golf in general, like it's awesome. We love links golf. We've not been shy about our love of links golf throughout this show and previous shows as well. And anytime you get to see these players, you get to see some really talented players playing on a really fun links course. What's there not to love?
Yeah, I mean, the dream scenario would be waking up Sunday and seeing Nelly and Heron and Lydia Ko and me,
Charlie Hall,
Sheeta and Charlie Hull, just all battling at the top, and you know, coming down the stretch Sunday morning, being able to watch that would be awesome, and it would do wonders for the women's game. And you know, people love watching links golf, like you said. It's, you know, people watch for the course as much as the players themselves, just because it's just, there's something about it, man. It's majestic. It's how golf was originally played and intended to be played, and it's fun. You know, it's a fun challenge to watch.
Right. Like you look at the Augusta National Women's Amateur, like why that's so popular. It's not because like there's a massive influx of supporters of the women's amateur golf game. It's, even though there should be, because there's some really great players in that field consistently. It's, you get to see Augusta National in pure tournament conditions a week before. It really feels like the kickoff of Masters Week starts with the Augusta National Women's Amateur. So that's, you know, people are willing to tune in for the course. And so that's, you know, that's something that the LPGA should capitalize on. And especially like, you know, the Rocket is, you know, we'll get to it. It's just kind of, you know, so they should definitely try to take advantage of that this week.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll have a weekend full of women's golf in the morning and then the men's game in the afternoon, and it'll be awesome. So
yes.
Unless you have any other final thoughts on the Women's Open, we can move to the aforementioned Rocket Classic, which Nick did a great job of selling right there. It is a stronger field than they're used to. You've got 4 of the top 10 guys in the field, 8 of the top 20, and about half of the top 60. I think 28 guys. You got Cam Young and Chris Gotterup, Xander Schauffele, Siwoo, Wyndham Clark, Patrick Cantley, Jackson Coyman is back in, Hideki's there. I mean, there's a bunch of good players. So I think this is going to be exciting. You know, there's everything I've read. There's been a lot of, this course has been renovated big time. It used to be a par 72. Now it's a par 70. They shaved off a couple of the par 5s from 4 to make them 2 par 5s now. So you've got a couple added longer par 4s, which could make it a little interesting, I guess. So I think this is, there's some good storylines here, and like I said, a bunch of good players and guys who are now, you know, especially with kind of the Jackson win last week, maybe a little extra motivated to come out and show something.
Yeah, there's especially players that, you know, are in contention for, you know, a captain's pick at the President's Cup that will definitely want to, you know, like Akshay Bhatia is in the field, Jacob Bridgman, like players that are like in that like standing, like in line for a captain's pick, but haven't played particularly well. I mean, someone like Ben Griffin ideally needs to like save himself from, you know, he's still qualified for like the top stuff, like an auto qualifier based on points, but it has not been a great year for him. And, you know, if he falls under that captain's pick umbrella, he's definitely going to be a bit more stressed. So there's a lot of players that are just fighting for President's Cup position, but also just fighting for FedEx Cup position in general. Yeah. There's, it's getting to that point in the year where there's, you're starting to feel the pressure of that top 70 really starting to set in. So it'll be interesting. I think, just you mentioned the course. I was laughing when I was looking at this because, how Data Golf has that, Pentagon, whatever. I don't know what shape it is. Yeah, the Pentagon of just the course fit. So they have in green of what the course prioritizes, and then they have the little dashed line of what the average PGA Tour course requires. And this week at Detroit Golf Club is a carbon copy of the Tour average triangle. I've never seen a course so much that was so much like the average. So, I think, the one thing that is not on the dot for average is around the green, where instead of, 0.3, it's 0.4, or instead of 0.4 is 0.3. It's very, the way I think I described this on the notes doc is you kind of just got to be meh at everything. And you'll, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, well, you need to be good at driving, irons, chipping, putting, basically everything. Just be meh at everything, and you'll be able to find your way into contention here.
Yeah, there's nothing super stand out about any particular part of someone's game. You just think that you're just going to have to play steady golf, which is why I'm sure Cam Young is going to be a popular pick this week. He's the highest ranked player in the field, and he has shown that he's played better recently. His putter seems to have found him again a little bit. So he's definitely someone who you'd think is going to finish well at this event. It's going to be interesting to see how Xander plays this week, I think. Maybe a bit of a surprise that he's playing here. And, with just the season he's had, it's been a little bit underwhelming. You'd think he's had good major finishes for sure. I mean, he was top 10 in both the Masters and the PGA, right outside of it at the US Open and the Open itself. But really outside of the beginning of the year, he just hasn't had great finishes in some of the other lesser events. So I'm interested to see how Xander is going to play this week.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Cam Young as well, and he's a very intriguing pick just because that finish at the Open, obviously finished runner-up, and arguably could have forced a playoff. Ran into some bunker trouble on the 18th hole. It was really funny. He had a fun quote in his press conference this week. He said, it was a great finish. It was a great finish. It was really fun to watch. If you weren't me, he said, if I wasn't me, I probably would have enjoyed that just as much as everybody else. It was a great finish. And so, whereas he was kind of just waiting for 2 hours of am I going to be in a playoff or not? So not the best way to spend your Sunday. But I think, that's just the question of what version of Cam Young are we going to be getting on this course? And, obviously the runner-up at the Open, that was his first top 10 since the Truist in May. So, it's been a really rough stretch. The putter has really not cooperated with him during that span. It's looked better. It looked a lot better at the Open Championship. So it's really just a question of what version of him, if he's going to maintain that form. He's someone that, Scotty's not in this field. Matt Fitzpatrick is not in this field. He's kind of been that meme of the three dragon heads of that's kind of been what this FedEx Cup race has been this year, of Scotty, Fitz, and then, Cam Young's just kind of there off to the side just because everybody's kind of forgotten him because he's kind of fell off the face of the earth ever since his win at the Cadillac. So, he's someone that if he could get it going again in the season's final weeks, he can very much re-enter the Player of the Year conversation, re-enter the FedEx Cup. conversation. He's someone that, absolutely can do it.
And what do you think? What are you looking for Jackson Koivin this week? It's, after the win last week, I think people expect him to play well again here. Winning twice in a row would be absolutely unbelievable, and I think would just break everybody's brains and send everybody into an absolute frenzy. But if he follows up last week with another good effort this week, finishes in the top 20 and competes in a much better field than was last week, even though last week you still had Scotty. You've just got more of the top players in this field this week. I think everybody's going to be intrigued to see how he does, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I think, he's obviously one of the biggest storylines coming into this week just because of what he did last week in Minnesota. Excuse me. And so I think you're going to, as you mentioned, it's hard for someone to win back-to-back. That's always, especially like the emotions of winning your first, like that's got to be like very mentally stimulating. Like it wouldn't shock me if, I think a win would be like, finishing in the top 20. I think just like being around on the weekend, being someone that like, hey, maybe could, but at the same time, if you told me like the top has blown off and he's just not gonna stop winning, like I would believe you as well, honestly. Like he was a player that when he was struggling in his first like few starts, we're like, okay, this isn't gonna last. Like he's going to figure it out at some point, and when he does, be careful. And so he figured it out. So I think he's a very intriguing pick this week, and I don't think he's going to go back to back, but if he did, it certainly would not surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, everybody got really excited when he was T23 at the U.S. Open, and then he missed the cut at the John Deere, which kind of threw everybody off. And then he was T10 at the ISCO and led to his win last week. So I agree with you. I think a win this week would be top 20 because, like you said, just everything that comes with winning your first event. And just the emotions behind that. And then, we talked about it on Monday. He was already out in Detroit getting ready for this tournament. So, one of the things we talked about too on Monday was just how impressive his mentality was. So that's going to be the big thing this week because, golf is a lot of handling your emotions and being able to stay focused. So coming off your first win and your now his fourth or fifth professional start, that's going to be how he handles that is going to be what's telling for sure.
Right.
Yep.
I think another name that I'm looking at as well is Chris Gotterup. He's on a very good tear. He's 3 straight top 25 finishes. Beginning with the win at the John Deere Classic, looking at his Pentagon as well, he does just about everything well, except driving accuracy. That's probably the big deficiency in his game, but it's been better. It's been a lot better in recent weeks, and just looking at what is required at the Detroit Golf Club, if he could keep his drives on the planet, I think he is absolutely someone that could contend this week. Someone that I'm giving heavy consideration to at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a few wins this year, and he's just been super impressive. He hasn't quite lived up to it in the majors, but that's kind of this. Honestly, it's kind of the story of the year with a few of the guys who have multiple wins, like Matt Fitzpatrick, haven't quite delivered in the majors. But hey, this isn't a major, so he's probably a good pick.
Right.
So you kind of touched on it, talking about Akshay and Jacob Bridgman maybe being a little bit motivated to make the President's Cup team. by Jackson Koiven's emergence. I'd throw JJ Spawn in there too as a guy. Do you think that's just a talking point for people like us, or is that something these guys actually think about? And, I think Xander, who's not in danger of not being on that team, but he said, as Jackson won, he said, that just motivates me to work harder. And obviously that kind of does. But when you're talking about specific things like being a part of that President's Cup team for those guys on the edge, do you think that's actually something?
I think it's definitely, like at the end of the day, I think we dissect, as sort of like the talking heads, we kind of just dissect a lot of things on the PGA, and we try to make sense of a lot of things when a lot of it is simply just like a straightforward answer. I think that, if you were to ask any of these players, like, yeah, it's definitely on their mind, but, I think at the end of the day, they're trying to just like shut things out and play golf in general. I think, just to touch on that Xander quote, it reminds me of like a lot of what I heard this past week with Blades Brown. And, you get a lot of these older players that are playing with him. And, at first they like are saying like, I'm not going to get beat by this little kid. Like, there's that motivation there, but then there's that energy that he gives them. Multiple players said this past weekend that playing with him gives them that sort of energy and, motivates them to like rediscover an area of their game that maybe they haven't played in a few years. Like he almost brings out, like, playing against someone that young almost brings out the best in you in that regard. So I think, there's definitely that aspect of pressure. I mean, I've done a great job of just avoiding your questions today. Getting back to your original question. I think there absolutely is that pressure. Because if you're someone like Justin Thomas, for example, he's someone that, has the pedigree of being on President's Cup teams, Ryder Cup teams, but hasn't really done a lot this year to justify being on that team in the first place. So I think guys like that are definitely feeling the pressure because, their place is not as guaranteed as it would be, obviously being in line for a captain's pick. If you're in line for a captain's pick, but you're also not playing very well, that brings in like the Koivens, like the Wyndham Clark is he's locked in, right?
He's in this field. Oh, locked into the President's
Cup? like top six. He should be, right?
Safely, yeah.
Yeah. But so like if you're not one of those players that's locked in but is still playing very good golf, like, there's players, like you said, like Koiven, Patrick Reed could be a very intriguing selection as well. I don't know if, like, because it's a PGA sanctioned event, like, even though he left LIV, like his suspension would be up. Yeah, because
it will be up by the time that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. So yeah, he's definitely someone that should receive hearty consideration as well as like a Jackson Koiven. So if you're one of those players that, is like maybe 8 or 9 on the captain's pick list, but someone like Akshay, who really hasn't done much of anything since his win at the Arnold Palmer, you're gonna want to like kick it in gear to like A, ensure your FedEx Cup standings, but B, like you're definitely gonna want to like prove that you belong on that team as well.
Yeah, and from what I understand, tell me if I'm wrong, the President's Cup is, it is in preparation for the Ryder Cup. So, like, to me, that means Jackson Koiven should absolutely be at least the 12th guy on that team because you want to get this guy acclimated to that kind of style of play and get him, because he's going to be a part of Ryder Cups,
right.
For 4 or 5 cycles. So you want to get him in early while he's here and, get him acclimated to that sort of play. And for the President's Cup, like, the American side kicks ass because the international side, isn't sending the best of the best in that.
Well, they're sending their best, but their best just isn't the best of the best.
Yeah. So I think that's all interesting kind of background it's just another interesting storyline. You know, as majors are done for the men, I think it's just an interesting storyline. You definitely have to kind of, you know, that group I was talking about with the Akshay, Jacob Bridgman, and JJ Spawn, and then Jackson and thrown in there too. And you're kind of seeing where they fall within each other, right? Who's finishing the best out of that group? Justin Thomas too, like you mentioned. It's just another added layer of intrigue, I think, as we march towards the FedEx Cup playoffs.
Right, and it's not fair. Like, you know, you want to approach this tournament with respect to the international side. Like, you don't want to treat this but like, this is essentially a preseason game for the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, totally.
And so you're definitely want to give people some consideration, like, especially if there's someone that, you know, and that's, you know, that's again, that added pressure for someone like Akshay. Like, if he performs well at the President's Cup is essentially like an audition for the Ryder Cup as well.
Yeah.
And so if he's someone that proves that he could be, you know, you just look at like Jordan Spieth still gets consideration for Ryder Cups just because of the tag team that he had with Justin Thomas. Like,
yep.
Ryder Cup reputation follows you the rest of your career. And, you know, even someone like Ian Poulter is considered one of the Ryder Cup legends just because of like what he's been able to do in match play. And so
Absolutely.
Having that extra consideration is very big. That reputation follows you throughout your career. And for someone like Akshay, he's definitely going to want to have a good result this week so that he can justify being on that team.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about Ryder Cup results following you in a good way. It also follows you in a bad way, like Russell Henley. So
yeah,
you just, you know, it's just one of those added bonuses and an added storyline that you got to watch. Okay, I'm going to throw a few guys at you here. You kind of mentioned him earlier, Wyndham Clark in this field, who has just been on a rip roar since the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson, where he was third place at the Memorial, T11 at the Canadian, then won the U.S. Open, T5 at the Travelers, T13 at the Scottish Open, and then missed the cut at the Open, which was pretty surprising.
Yeah, it's kind of a buzzkill.
Yeah, totally. And then he was off last week and is back this week. You would think he's going to, you know, play well. It's just, this is what, you know, we talked about it on Monday a little bit with who's going to be the player of the year, like why Scotty stands out just because he hasn't won. He's just been such a constant in the floor. You just have to acknowledge how good of a floor he has. For most of these guys, man, it's a tale of two seasons. For Wyndham, it's exactly like that because the way he started the year, up really his first good finish, after the American Express, he was T13, but then he had no green anywhere until the Masters where he was T21. He missed the cut at the PGA, and then he started his winning streak at CJ, like I just mentioned. But it's been a tale of two seasons for Wyndham, and that's the case with most of these guys.
Well, so what you're saying is the last time he missed a cut, he went on a tear. So you'll be saying another tear is coming?
I'd say this could be a week where a tear starts again.
Are we adding Wyndham Clark to the Player of the Year conversation? Or
I mean, God, if he gets a third win here,
you have to give him that consideration, yeah,
for sure. Especially with one of those wins being in a major, he would absolutely have to be considered for it.
I want to see where he is in the FedEx Cup standings. That would be, he's third in the FedEx Cup standings.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's got to be top 5.
Yeah, I didn't even realize. Or no, Cam Young is still 3, but Wyndham is 4, and then Goddard is 5.
Okay.
So, yeah, an interesting player to look at. You know, you mentioned Russell Henley, and he does everything extremely well. Like, just looking at his Pentagon, he does everything extremely well, but he just hits the ball, like, whereas Chris Goddard hits the ball extremely far, but can't keep it or can't keep the ball on the planet. Like, yeah. Russell Henley probably has one of the most pointiest driving accuracy Pentagon things, but just hits the ball absolutely nowhere. Like it doesn't even look like what was that? What was that? This is me pulling like some middle school geometry here. Like, what was that? The parallelogram where it's like the longer one on top, the shorter one, and then like the two like you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, a trapezoid.
Yeah, sure, we can call it a trapezoid too. But like, it almost looks like a four pointed one, just because like it's pretty much just a straight line of driving distance. It's nothing.
Yeah, it feels like he's had a bit of a just uneventful year.
And it's weird to say that because he had the T3 at the Masters. He won the Charles Schwab. He finished T9 at the Open. Like, he's having a pretty good year, pretty under the radar year.
Definitely an under the radar, really good year. He's only missed a few cuts. And when he doesn't miss a cut, he's not like finishing, in the 60s. He's finishing like top 20, top 25 most of the time. He's
fifth in the world golf rankings.
He should be. He's really good, and he just hasn't. Yeah. I mean, he won the Schwab, right? He's had a victory this year, so
yeah,
that's one more victory than a lot of the guys on tour.
Absolutely. He's a player that, I don't think driving distance is really going to kill you this week, just because of what this course profile is. But he's someone that, I think could be an intriguing pick. I wouldn't be surprised if Will gives him some consideration, as he always tends to do.
Yeah, Will loves him.
One thing that I think, we've touched on some of the big names is that some of the former winners are not considered, some of the strongest players in the world. Like Aldrich Potgieter won last year. I can say very confidently that he's not going to win this week. This is, I don't think we've done a prove me wrong guy in a very long time, but he's definitely one that, like, his course profile is, hasn't he kind of just hits the ball far and then doesn't really do anything else.
Yeah.
That's the one thing.
Another past winner, 2023, Ricky.
Yeah, Ricky Fowler is someone that
won this week.
He's had a bit of an up and down year. He's had some good starts. He's had some bad starts. Not quite sure what to. Yeah, a lot of miscuts sprinkled in there. So I'm not entirely sure what to make of Ricky this year. He's someone that, is intriguing. I'm not sure. I kind of knew this happened, but I didn't really anticipate that Cam Davis has won this event twice.
Yeah.
Like, he's someone that, could get some consideration. The family man is back this week and has won here as well. Definitely another place that I think this was, one of his back-to-back wins at, the 3M and the Rocket. So, what did he do at the 3M? Did he do anything?
No, I don't even remember him at all.
He missed the cut. So.
Yeah.
Great family, though.
Great family. Okay, one other guy who I'm contractually obligated to bring up is Jake Knapp, who I think is going to be a popular pick this week. He looked like he was back last week at the 3M Open and kind of shook off the injury bug that plagued him. I say it every week. I'm just so bummed that he got hurt because he was playing really, really well. He's one of the best ball strikers on tour, one of the best drivers. He's been putting pretty well this year too. So it was encouraging to see him play well last week. I think he shot a 62 on Sunday, which really propelled him for that top 13 finish. So I think he's going to play well again this week. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in the top 10.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Another player that, the critics really seem to like is the Woo.
Yeah.
Like, he looks good.
Did you see the Michael Kim tweet yesterday where
I did, yeah.
Kim asked Siwoo if he wanted to go, I think it was Korean barbecue, and Siwoo punched it in and the GPS, and he just drove there. And there are apparently 2 locations, and one of them is in Canada, where Michael Kim was not, and Siwoo ended up, crossing the border and didn't have
without a passport, by the way.
Yeah, no passport, whatever. It took him like 90 minutes. The story of he said, like, first there was 1 cop and then 2, and then there's 8 cops around Siwoo, and they're having to go through all this shit and like make sure he wasn't like a drug mule or whatever. So if that impacts how you think he's gonna play, but yeah, Siwoo's just been great this year, and I'm sure he'll play well again this week.
Yeah, you have to think someone like that is due for something. Like,
Yeah.
can absolutely. He's put together a lot of good results. It just hasn't necessarily translated. Looked to be in contention at the Open, just kind of ran out of gas. But yeah, definitely someone that
you'd think he's going to get over the hump, but now it's becoming one of those things where it's like, man, I don't know if you're like, I know you're going to play well. I just don't know if you're going to actually win. And he said it was him, right, who said, another choke or whatever. Like, he kind of acknowledges and is very self-aware of what he's going through. So I kind of give him the benefit of the doubt, where he's, I don't think he's like so uptight that it's going to be a hindrance. You just think he plays well, and you put yourself in contention every week. One of the weeks you're going to break through, kind of thing,
Yeah, he's like, just looking at his profile, looking at, obviously he's 2 straight top 10s. He's someone that, I'm giving a little consideration to. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, he's always a good pick, I think. Okay. Any other guys you've got your eye
on? I think that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, I think we've talked about a ton of guys. This is a good field. I'm excited.
This is a better field than I had originally anticipated. These kind of build-ups to the what's it called, the FedEx Cup playoffs. You're gonna get your guys, like your contenders, like dropping in a start or 2 just to like really get that like warm up for the playoffs. But there is sort of that dogfight in the middle to the back of the pack as well that is very entertaining. And I think there's a lot of players that are very good that could play very well this week and make it a very entertaining finish.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though majors are finished, there's still a lot of good and intriguing golf left to be played and left to be followed for us. So looking forward to the Rocket Classic and its last iteration this week for sure. Okay, last bit of info we've got as our resident Korn Ferry expert now. Nick is going to give us a look-see at the Utah Championship. What do you got for us there?
Yeah, so the Utah Championship is at Ogden Golf and Country Club. Some very big names in the field. I think Tommy Morrison had told me after he won on Sunday that, he's going to celebrate and he'll get to Utah when he gets to Utah. And I'm hoping he's gotten to Utah at this point. And
yeah, well, you got to celebrate before you get to Utah, because it's tough to celebrate in Utah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he'll definitely, he's the betting favorite this week. That's not a surprise. He's playing some of the best golf of his career. It's a marquee group, I think. Just looking at some of the pairings, it'll be Tommy, and then Blades Brown is paired with him as well. Someone that, as I mentioned before, has a lot of course history at this course. Notably not at the Rocket Classic, trying to just secure his Korn Ferry Tour card. Absolutely someone that, could play a very big role in this tournament. He had that 61 on Saturday at the Glen Club. Someone that I think could absolutely factor into this tournament. And then the final member of that grouping is last week's runner-up, Dylan Minante, which that leads us directly to our very special announcement. We will be bringing you a very special episode of Center Cup that will be premiering tomorrow with none other than Korn Ferry Tour player Dylan Minante joining this show. It's our first ever guest on this show. So we're very excited to bring that to you. We'll be we'll be talking with him later today. We'll get that up sometime tomorrow. We'll communicate obviously a confirmed time, but yeah, that'll be a great conversation.
That's going to be so awesome. That's for our first interview officially on the Center Cup podcast. That is going to be an awesome one. He's really good, man. He's going to be.
He's a damn good player, and he's someone that I think we looked at. I think he's currently 7th in the Korn Ferry Tour points. So like at this point, he's someone that you should probably expect to see on the PGA Tour next year. He's also like the conversation around Ryan Fox is that he was one of the fastest players on the planet who won the Open Championship. I think Dylan is faster, honestly. Like the only proof I have, I don't have any proof of Dylan Fox's, or Ryan Fox, excuse me. I don't have any proof of his pace of play stats. Obviously, the Korn Ferry Tour tracks those stats. So as it stands, Dylan Minante is statistically the fastest golfer on the planet right now. And, just seeing him in person, like I can absolutely back that up.
Yeah, I can't think of fewer things that would make me like a golfer more than playing at a blazing fast pace. It's just the best. It just makes it so enjoyable to watch.
That was the one thing I was repeating just all through the week was that we need more Dylan Minantes in the world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's got to be a matter of time before we're doing pace of play on the PGA Tour, don't you think?
It has to be. Yeah. I think Patrick Cantlay is on the player board, so I'm not entirely. Yeah, maybe not.
Okay. Yeah, that's gonna be an awesome interview. So everybody, look out for that one. Nick and Will are going to be doing that later today, and we're going to put that up at some point on Thursday. So definitely something that's going to be a super interesting conversation. You guys have a lot to ask him, a lot to talk to him about, a lot of good golf on the Korn Ferry Tour with guys who are going to be a factor on the PGA Tour sooner rather than later in these next couple of years. So that's going to be super awesome.
Very much.
Okay. Anything else we've got to cover? We've gone. That was a pretty good preview. Those were
I think we've done just about everything.
Yeah, how much more could you want on the Rocket Classic and the Women's Open? Those are some good deep dives here. We've got a lot of good golf to look forward to this week.
Yeah, should be a fun one. Should be a great weekend to spend on the couch.
Yeah,
Lollapalooza's this weekend. It's looking like it's going to be a bit of a rainy Lollapalooza. So if you don't feel like sifting through all of that and putting yourself through that nonsense, the Rocket Classic is going to be a great marquee viewing.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the Women's Open in the mornings to ease you into the Rocket Classic in the afternoon. So if you wanted to just watch golf all day, every day from Thursday through Sunday,
this is a weekend where the Korn Ferry is being broadcast too.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I think
even
from
better.
like 5 to 8 Central Time.
So all day and all night too.
So
awesome.
The party never stops.
The party does
professional golf.
No, and it never stops here because we talk about it all. And we are definitely going to have our picks out. I'm sure we'll do a Women's Open pick as well. We got to figure out exactly who we're allowing to be picked and who we're not allowing to be picked. We know Nick is liking Charlie Hull, so we're going to have to see who Will likes as well. And I've got some thinking to do. I'm still not 100% sure even after talking through everything. So look out for our picks. Our Instagram at Center Cup Pod, our Twitter and TikTok at centercup.pod. And you can always email Will at centercup.pod@yahoo.com if you would be so inclined.
Please.
Yes, please. Okay.
I think seriously, like, how have we gone every single episode begging and not a single person has how has it been this long?
Shameless begging too. We don't even care.
I bet Will is keeping. I bet someone has emailed him
and
keeping it from us so that we can continue like There's got to be a conspiracy.
It's also possible he just got locked out of that email address.
You know what? That is true.
Now it's just like, oh, no, nobody's
Schrodinger's email.
Exactly. All right. Well, enjoy the action this week and weekend, everybody, and we will talk to you next week. Remember, special pod coming out tomorrow. Make sure to catch that, and thank you for listening as always.